Welcome back, folks, and a very happy Sunday to you. I hope you're having a good day so far, and I hope for anyone out there celebrating Mother's Day, you're having a good Mother's Day. This week, we're looking at the letter to the angel of the church of Smyrna. This is found in Revelation 2, verses 8 through 11. I'm going to go on and read that before we get in. And to the angel of the church of Smyrna write, the words of the first and the last who died and came to life. I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich, and the slander of those who say that they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison that you may be tested, and for 10 days you will have tribulation. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who conquers will not be hurt by the second death. That brings up a lot of things, obviously. This one is pretty much about a church in Smyrna about to be persecuted a great deal. The beginning of the lesson this week is actually started off by referencing what would become the French city of Lyon and its happenings that took place in roughly 177 AD. At that time, Christians were considered Jews, as long as the Jews accepted them, and the Jews were exempt from offering worship to the governor or the Roman emperor. Except at this point in what would become Lyon, the Jews began to basically turn Christians into their governor, and Christians began to be persecuted. They were harassed and ridiculed, their homes were looted, they were dragged to the streets, stoned, and even imprisoned or put to death. And this lesson is basically Christ saying to rejoice in suffering. We hear throughout the Bible that we are to be set apart. We are to be an example, the light of the world, the salt of the earth. And when we are persecuted, it is very simply because Satan and his agents, and those who believe that they should be able to do whatever they want, whenever they want, they get tired of seeing people living and being more fulfilled. I think of the story of Job, where Satan was determined to show that anyone, no matter how pious and righteous, would turn from God if suffering got too great. God allowed him to persecute Job, but not to lay a hand on Job himself. Job lost everything, his family, his home, his livelihood, even his health, and he never once denounced God. And that's the lesson we're being taught here, is that we are in for, at some point in our future, suffering and persecution. We should not only be ready for it, we should be ready to endure. And it says endure unto death. And there are a lot of questions that come out of this lesson that we really do need to look to. And there was actually a letter written by Father, get the name here, Father Irenaeus. And it was written to the church, and it says, we can't even begin to put into words, much less describe in detail, the magnitude of the persecution here, how the pagans raged so terribly against the saints, and how the blessed martyrs endured so patiently. To begin with, they nobly endured all the abuse while the mob collectively piled on, screaming at them, punching them, dragging them through the streets, plundering their homes, stoning them, locking them up, and everything else a savage horde loves to inflict on a despised enemy. And that to me is telling me that Christians will once again become the despised enemy. It wasn't until very late in an emperor's life that Christianity became the official religion of Rome, creation of the Vatican. And it was only because that emperor, Constantine, had a dream that if his armies carried the cross into battle, they would be victorious. I don't know if he saw the Christians and simply wanted a way to make them not be persecuted anymore because he empathized with them, or if God showed him that vision and said, if you will follow me, you will be blessed. No one will know until we're able to ask God himself, and by then it'll be irrelevant. But the questions come next. What are the descriptions that Christ gives himself? Quite simply, the first and the last who died and came to life. Very, very easy to explain, because Christ is the first. He is God, fully man. First and the last, though, he truly became fully man. He knew before he was embodied in that babe what his life would be. We saw this in the prayer where he said, Father, if it is your will, let this cup pass from me. But he still willingly went to his death. He that died and came to life, he died on that cross, fulfilling prophecy, no bones broken. 3 days later rose and exited the tomb. This is telling us that he has the power of God over life and death, and simply points to how he proved it. What does Jesus know about the Christians at Smyrna? Well, the same thing he knew about his life. He knew what they would be going through. And he is reassuring them and telling them that though suffering is going to come, those who endure and do not lose their faith, they will be given the crown of life. I think back to the Beatitudes. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. How often does the meek inherit anything? Think about your own job. You have someone who just shows up, clocks in, does their job, leaves. They don't stick their neck out. They don't take chances. They just quietly show up, do their job, and leave. They are literally the church mouse in the office. How often are they given more than the minimal raise required? How often are they given more than a minimum bonus when the company says we're going to share our profits with everyone? How often are they given a promotion or a commendation? Except maybe perfect attendance. Very rarely. The meek don't inherit, but in this case the meek inherit the earth, because the meek are those who live the example of Christ, the example of not exalting themselves over others, the example of not betraying the faith, the example of being who exactly we are supposed to be, loving and kind, but not boastful or prideful. And do you find it comforting, or do you find it disturbing to know what Christ knows about you? I'll admit, my own life, I know that I have done some things that I shouldn't have. I've not always been the Christian I should have been. And I can't change that. None of us can. But I do find it comforting because when Christ was with God, prior to being embodied in that child and born to the Virgin Mary, prior to all that, he still knew me. He knew my life. He knew when it would end and how. And he knew that on this day, at this time, I would be re-recording this video because I didn't turn my microphone on the first time I recorded it. And he knew I would be rereading that letter a second time tonight. And he knew I would be going through all of these things a second time tonight. And yes, he knew I got upset at myself for not turning on my mic. But in my mind, maybe I needed to go through all of this twice tonight to really internalize it. But he still came to earth as fully man. He still willingly went to Golgotha, and he still willingly gave his life for me and for you, knowing everything about us, birth to death, our failings and our triumphs, and everything in between. He still did it. So I found it extremely comforting to know that he knows everything about me that there is to know or will be to know, because he still said, you're worth it. Even though the church was marked by poverty in Smyrna, it's said that they were rich. You know, I don't like to quote pop culture. I don't like to quote movies when it comes to stuff like this. Mostly because the people in them are generally not representations of Christ. They're not Christians who are simply in a movie. And I don't really know much about the actor Morgan Freeman, other than I know he's extremely talented and, has that voice to just enthrall someone. But in Bruce Almighty, he tells Carrie's character, some of the happiest people on earth go home smelling to high heaven. And I want you to really look and think about the Bill Gates, or the Jeff Bezos, or the Zuckerbergs, or the Dorseys of the world. Do they look happy, or do they just look rich? Look at the people in Congress, millionaires on a salary that shouldn't do that, even over 40 years. And look at their homes, sprawling estates. constituents live almost in poverty. Do they look happy? No, they don't. And we can see this in every walk of life. I can point to televangelists who live in sprawling manors, and they appear happy and fulfilled. But if you really look at them, you can see that it's all about things. And I won't lie. I won't lie and tell you that if I had no debt and I had the money to build a nice big house where, my parents and I could all live together, and I had my show kitchen, my dad had his garage to tinker with cars, Mom had her craft room, and I had a studio to record better quality than this, I won't tell you that that would be nice. I'd be very happy to have it. But those things and that money, that wouldn't make me happy. What would make me happy in that situation would be the same things that make me happy now. Being able to spend time with my parents. Being able to cook for my parents, my family, my friends. Being able to sit and live in a country that says, I can study this book, and I can make videos talking about this book and what it teaches us, and I can spread my faith, and I can be me. I can tell you, if I had $100 million come into my life, I'm not going to lie. Yes, we'd have paid off cars. We'd have a nice home where my parents who need me around could live in the home with me. I'd have a nicer kitchen, and we'd have all this stuff. But that wouldn't be what life is about. That would be there simply because they need me around. I need them around. There are things like cooking or crafting that we find enjoyable, but that's not what life is about. What life is about is people and our relationships and our relationship with Christ. And I can tell you, I would still be making these videos from a home studio. And it wouldn't matter to me if I have 1 or 1 million subscribers. I'm still going to make these videos. Yes, I'm still doing a giveaway, trying to grow the channel because I want this message out there. But it's not the money or the notoriety or the size of the channel that makes me happy. What makes me happy is knowing that I can spread this message and the hope that someone out there is going to have a seed planted in their mind, and they're going to ask questions. And maybe I make heaven just a little more crowded. What comes with that is how would you measure your economic or financial standing? Well, paycheck to paycheck pretty much explains a lot of the world today. I'm not going to lie and say I have a good job, but I don't have a low-paying job. I have a job that lets me have a reliable, nice vehicle. I have a job that lets me have food in my fridge, a computer I can record videos on and play games on and watch movies on. I have a house that keeps me dry when it's raining or cool when it's hot or hot when it's cool. I have more than a lot of people on this planet do. I don't have a lot of money in the bank, but I have enough to make sure that I have what I need. That's all I'll ever really look for. Being able to make sure that those in my life are taken care of. I can go over, cook for my folks, I can help friends out, I can sit here and read, I can study. What more do I need, right? Now, I talked about this in the opening with the happenings in what would become Leon. In that time, the Jewish people in that area were exempted from offering worship to the emperor. Christians were included in that as long as they were accepted by the Jews. Now, around 177 AD, they began to basically out the Christians to the Roman governors and law enforcement, and they lost that protection because the Jews were no longer accepting of them. And that's where the persecution began. Now, it says in this letter that they were Jews, called themselves Jews, but were not, but were a synagogue of Satan. And this very simply is pointing out the same thing that we're seeing today. Satan knows he's going to lose in the end. He still has that childish or, teenage thought that maybe I can change things, maybe I can make it work, maybe I can win. But he has to know he's up against someone who's not going to lose. And his goal since the fall has been to corrupt as many as he can, for the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And yeah, he's not out there trying to actively murder people, but if he can keep them from turning to God, he still kills them twice. When they die, he knows they'll die again. With him. Misery loves company, right? And they were called a synagogue of Satan because they were using their position as Jews, members of God's chosen nation, his chosen people, to persecute those following Christ. We saw it with Christ and Barabbas, where Satan managed to whisper in the right ears, and they chanted, "Give us Barabbas." It's just continuing the same old game. And it's there that he identifies the true enemy in persecution, and that is Satan himself. Satan doesn't have the ability to, physically interact with us. But he and his agents, well, they can whisper in your ear. Don't go to church, go to work. Don't worry about studying your Bible today. You need to go do this thing, and you'll make an extra $100. Or maybe, oh yeah, just go out and go drinking with your friends. Don't worry about how you're going to drive home. How many of us can say we haven't heard those little whispers? Those little whispers of, oh, you don't need to do that thing today. You need to do this. It'll make you lots of money. Or it'll make you lots of friends. People love you. At this point in my life, 44 years old in a couple of weeks, single, no kids. For the time being, living in an unfinished home that I'm still working on. My dad's helping me, and we're doing what we can, but we haven't been able to for a while. And I can honestly tell you, I'm happier now than when I had an apartment. Or when I lived with a friend of mine for a little over a year, working a good job. I can tell you, I'm happier now than I was then. Because I'm not focused on the world. I'm not focused on having gobs of friends and out partying every night and going out to the nicest restaurants and driving the prettiest car. I got a truck. It's a truck. It's a year old. It doesn't have any dings, but it will before long. It's not the prettiest thing out there. It gets me point A to point B, and I can haul some stuff. I have a house. It's not pretty. It's not the nicest thing. It's not a mansion on the hill. But I got a mansion waiting for me when I get to my real home. Where I am now, I'm happy because I have the ability to do what I now truly know and accept I should have been doing my whole life. Reading, studying, and living that example. And I know I'm not perfect. I'm going to fail. I'm going to backslide. But no one save Christ has ever been perfect on this earth. Adam and Eve were created perfect, but they rejected it. They sinned. Now, countless years later, here we are. But we still have that chance to regain that perfection when we get to the other side. It tells us that Christ knows that the church in Smyrna is going to suffer. And he tells them, you're going to suffer for 10 days. The thing about it is, to me, both of those things make the suffering a little bit easier. If I know Christ knew I was going to suffer and didn't stop it, and he tells me it's going to be for 10 days, well, one, this suffering is going to make me something better. Think about a metal refinery. Think about these things. Not Dr. Pepper, the can, aluminum. I built a backyard foundry, it was inspired by the king of random, who makes all sorts of goofy stuff. But I made it for about $50, and I can melt cans down and make ingots of aluminum. And I can make a 1 pound ingot that's worth twice what 1 pound of cans is worth, because I've refined that aluminum by applying intense heat to the aluminum. I've burned off the paint, burned out the remnants of soda. I've had all the impurities flipped to the top and dredged them off. Fire, or persecution, or suffering, they do the same thing. For what fire does to metal, suffering and persecution that God chooses not to stop helps us, because that persecution, it takes things away from us that we don't need. I think about the last year. I didn't need to go out to karaoke every Friday night. I didn't need to go out twice a week with friends to where we would just sit and do nothing of consequence for several hours. I didn't need to go to movies every weekend. I didn't need to do all those things. And oddly enough, God used something that the government was lying about, that I firmly believe they're lying about, to shut all those things down. And over this last year, I've read this book far more than in the 4 years previous. And I've been convicted more than I can ever say I really have, because I've been truly reading this. And now we get to where I'm spreading that. I'm not a theologian. I'm not a pastor. I have a bachelor's degree in history. But I still read that book, and I still make connections, and I still come to conclusions. And that's all I'm doing, is spreading what I'm learning and the answers I'm coming to. I still want to know what you think. But also knowing that suffering has a time limit helps immensely in enduring said suffering. Now, I never went into the military. I should have. Looking back, hindsight's 2020, right? Even though mine isn't. But my nephew's in Army boot camp right now. And from everyone I've talked to, my father included, boot camp is horrendous. The drill instructors are literally there to break you down and build you back up into a soldier. And I know my nephew is a strong young man, strong in his faith. But this is the longest he will have been away from home in his life. Doing something he has never, ever done. Going through something he can never have imagined until now. But he knows it's not forever. And that's something I talked to him about. I told him, I've talked to people. I didn't do this, but I've talked to people. It is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. And he said, yeah, but I want to do this. I said, I know. The one thing, and I did tell him, remember, it's not forever. Boot camp. Even Marine Corps boot camp that's, I believe, 4 or 6 or 8 weeks longer than Army. It's a set period. I'm here from date A to date B. And as long as I do everything I'm expected between those 2 points in time, it ends on date B. And I know he's going straight into AIT, which is even longer than boot camp, but it still has an end. He knows on this date, or within a week of this date, I'm going back home, and I'll report to my post, and I'll do my job, and I'll be home. That aids in going through something very tough. If you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, even if it's 3 months out, even if it's 7 months out, even if it's 2 years out, every day you wake up and you do what you're supposed to do to get through that, you can say, I'm getting closer to the end. I'm getting closer to that goal. Back in 95, when I graduated high school, I did not want to go to college. I was looking down the barrel of a very good job that I knew would let me get a car, and at that time a pager, although now today's equivalent would be a cell phone, and other things. And my parents wanted me to go to college. I went, never went to class. Lo and behold, I failed. And I didn't care. I went and got me that good job. And 9 years later, I had bounced from job to job to job to job to job, never being fulfilled by any of them. And in October of 2004, I got laid off in a reduction in force from a very good job, and they took good care of me. I walked away from that with 6 months of insurance they paid for, a month of pay from the company, and a month of pay from the company they were merging with. So I walked away with 2 months worth of pay. So my car payment paid 2 months, insurance paid 2 months, cell phone paid 2 months, everything. I pretty much had November and December off. My parents looked at me and said, well, you want to go back to college, move home. So I took a weekend to help a political candidate I believed in. Came back after that. Election season was over for me other than voting. So my parents helped me move out of my apartment, which luckily was right at the end of my lease. I moved home. I got a job driving pizza. 27 years old, driving pizza, about to start college. Spring of 2005, I started college. Fall semester of 2010, I graduated. College was not easy. Because here I am, almost 10 years older than everyone around me, starting as a freshman. Starting, in my case, with a 0.0 GPA. Because I took classes and I failed them. I didn't drop, so they were gone. I didn't have no GPA. I had a 0. 6 years later, I graduated with a 3.75 GPA, worked my butt off to get as good a grade as I could in everything, even in math and science, which I'll admit are not my subjects. I still studied. I sought out tutors. I worked because I wanted to be there. And even though I wanted to be there, it was a very tough time because I saw all of my friends that I had made over the course of the last 9 years working their jobs and going out on weekends and going out to dinners and all this. And I'm sitting at home studying. I'm going out once, maybe twice a month to see them. But every time I thought about it, I said, nope, I'm a little bit closer. At the end of every semester, I am 12 hours closer. I am 12 hours closer. December of 2010 was one of the best days I've had in a long time because I walked that stage. I graduated with my bachelor's degree with a GPA that my academic counselor, academic advisor, said very few people could have done. And I know that's not persecution or suffering on the level of the Church of Smyrna. But if you ask anybody today, if you had to live for 6 years seeing your friends and going out to dinner once or twice a month because you're working a very low-paying job while going to school, and they're working very high-paying jobs, so when they go out to these restaurants, you can't afford it and you got to study, would you do it? I bet 50% would say, nah, I'll just get a good job. When you can see the end of the road, no matter how hard the road is, you can see the end, it helps. And that's where that you will suffer for 10 days comes in. Christ says, you will suffer. I know you will. I've known this for a while. I didn't stop it. But it's not forever. It's for 10 days. I can guarantee you, if I was in that situation, and I saw that letter coming from an apostle of Christ saying, these are the words of God, and it said 10 days, in my mind, and this is just me hoping of how I would have responded, I would have said, well, God knew it was coming and said he's not going to stop it, meaning he knows I can do it. It's only 10 days. In the back of my mind, there's always, if it kills me, I'm just going home. I'm not denying my faith. And that Christ knew it was coming, and that he said 10 days, tells the people of Smyrna, I knew this was coming, and I knew you could do it. That says a lot. But he also says, be faithful unto death. And that's a hard thing to think about for a lot of people, myself included. I don't want to die. I'll admit, I've gotten low in my life. Had things that I wanted so badly not happen. One of them in particular really hit me hard. I'm not going to go into it. But I've come through. I don't want to die. But I know that if I was in that situation, or if I'm in a situation where I'm being told, just give up your fairy tales and give up your religion. It's all you have to do. I'm going to say, no. You can kill me. I'm not giving it up. One, I don't want to go to hell. And I'm not going to betray my God. But the other part of that is, who's going to see you doing that? We are headed in a handcart powered by Nas straight to hell. And the last 7 years of that journey are going to be the tribulation. At some point, the people on earth are going to be told, take this mark on your hand or on your head. Without it, you can't buy, sell, or do any business. After that, it will be take the mark or die. And if I'm here, I'll vanish into the woods, trap rabbits, and collect water. Won't be living as good a life as I am now, but I'll be alive and won't have betrayed my faith. They say, take this mark or die. I'll march to the guillotine. Firing squad. The fire. Praying and praising my God the whole way. They will have to kill me to silence me. And imagine somebody on the brink, teetering. Should I take the mark? Or should I stand up and embrace my faith in God? They see somebody that says, no, my faith is that important to me, willing to die for it. That is a powerful witness. Think of the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Thrown into the furnace, untouched. When the witness looked through the door, he said, there are 4 men in there. When they opened the door, the people who opened the doors were consumed by the flames. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego walked out. Think of Daniel in the lion's den, thrown in by the king of Persia, Darius, told, "You're going to die." They had starved those lions for several days to make sure they were ravenous. And they would tear Daniel apart because he dared not hide his faith. They said, "You cannot be seen praying to any god but the emperor," and he still prayed by his open window every night. They threw him into the lion's den, locked the door. God shut the lions' mouths. Daniel never fought it. He never betrayed his faith. He didn't try to escape. He didn't try to run. He knew what would happen, and he went there anyway. But the witness of him not denying his faith, and the witness of him being willing to walk into that den of lions, knowing they'd been starved and were ravenous, knowing he may die, it changed people's minds. And that's the point of this. Be faithful unto death. Because even if you are killed, you're still showing a witness, showing a message to the world. And if you are killed, you're faithful unto death, and you are put to death, you will be given the crown of life. Martyrs, that's what the people who do that are called. I don't want to be one. I pray I'm not here when all that goes down. And I'm not doing it to get the crown. I'm doing it because it's my faith, and I'm not going to betray it. But God does clearly say, anyone who suffers unto death, if you are put to death, you will be honored. Because those are the people who are tested to the ultimate degree, told, it's either do this or we're going to kill you. And if they tell me they're going to kill me by lighting me on fire, I'm just going to say do it. And as a firefighter, I know how painful that'll be. And is the reward worth it? Well, ask yourself this. We know the wages of sin are death. We know that non-believers are going to die a second time when they are sent to hell. Separated, completely separated in every way from God. We are God's creation. Even non-believers feel it in their heart. They reject it, and it causes them pain, and they fill that void in their life with drugs, with sex, with anything and everything else, and they're still never happy. So the question is the reward worth it? Is the reward of knowing you're going to go to heaven worth it? And I would say absolutely. But the reward is very simple. 8 words. Well done, my good and faithful servant. I liken it to when I decided that I wanted to be in school, that I wanted that degree, that I wanted to be there, and that I worked. All through elementary, middle, and high school, I coasted. I was the kid who could never crack a book and still make B's. And my parents weren't upset, but I don't know that they were as proud as they could have been. If I'd have just half-heartedly cracked a book, I probably could have made straight A's. Low A's, but still. But when I walked that stage, because I wanted to be there and I busted my butt, simply knowing how proud my parents are, that's worth it. Now imagine how much more you're going to feel when the Creator of everything says, well done, my good and faithful servant. No amount of suffering on the planet is going to make me turn from that. It's not selfish. Because I know that's what He told me to do. I'm obeying. I'm finally obeying. But I'm not going to stop. I want to know what you think. This has been a little longer one, but I want to know what you think. As always, keep it civil, please. We're not here to scream and yell and attack each other like toddlers. We are adults. We can have a civil discussion, whether we dissent and disagree or not. Discuss, dissent, debate is healthy. but keep it civil. Again, for any moms watching, I hope you have, or if this is later in the year or later down the line, had a good Mother's Day. For those watching on Sunday who haven't talked to your mom in a while, give them a call. Go see them. Cherish the time you have with people, because it may not last near as long as you think. In the end, I hope everyone has a wonderful week, a wonderful rest of your day, and I will talk to you next time.